And I want to welcome everybody for coming back for another Wednesday evening of the Emergency Food Forum sessions. And if you've been with us for the past 2 evenings, then I really commend you, and I'm really glad to see you back again. And if this is your first or second evening, then welcome. We hope that you enjoy it as much as we have. So we have quite a lot to go through in the next 2.5 hours. But first, I'd like to take it over to Joe for our welcome and land acknowledgement. Josephine.
Welcome, everybody. So I'd like to start by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nations. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. We are all striving to be treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here forcibly, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, I honor and pay tribute to my ancestors of African origin and descent as well. I want to add to this that there was a prophecy long ago that there would come a time of great trouble and great destruction, great suffering, much death, and Mother Earth and Grandmother Moon would mourn and weep with the violence that would occur. And yet, the people from around the world would begin to gather together here on Turtle Island and begin to heal the planet, begin to heal Mother Earth, begin to work together from all 4 directions. And this prophecy, the signal for this prophecy, actually occurred about 15, 20 years ago. I can't remember exactly when, with the birth of a white buffalo calf in the Black Mountains. And there are those in the Indigenous communities around the world who are starting to see signs that we are all beginning finally to come together in solidarity and do the hard and very important work of growing up as a species and beginning to heal our planet together. So with that, I hope we can all do that tonight and take one step forward and another step forward. Thanks all for coming.
Thank you, Josephine. I think I definitely needed to hear those words. And tonight, you know, we all do our small part in fulfilling that prophecy. As there's a Chinese saying, you know, times of crisis are also times of great opportunity. So let's take this opportunity and run with it. So I'm going to pass it over to Susanna, who is going to run through some of the hosting guidelines and other such important information. All right. Over to you, Susanna.
Thank you so much, Lily. I'm so proud and blessed to be able to be here today. I'm representing local food and farm co-ops. We are a partner amongst many today with the Emergency Food Forum, including the National Farmers Union Ontario, Local 305, Oasis Food Hub, Conscious Minds Co-op, St. Jamestown Community Co-op, as well as our presenting partners, African Food Basket and Toronto Urban Growers. So thank you to all of our partners and sponsors for making this event possible. I'm going to also just announce a few of those housekeeping details before we get started. First of all, if you could try to keep yourself muted for the duration of our call, that would be great to avoid some feedback in the background. We are going to be recording our presentations and discussion today. So if you prefer to do so for anonymity, feel free to change your name. You can also, it's advisable to keep your video off to help with bandwidth issues as well too. Additionally, you'll receive a copy of this recording once it's ready. And I'm going to keep a note in chat about these details as we go along. I will turn it back over to Lily now, who's going to be taking us through who's joining us today.
Thanks, Susanna. So basically, I'll just describe briefly what we hope to accomplish tonight. We do have 2 rounds of breakout groups scheduled. And I know in previous sessions, each of those breakout rounds dealt with different topics. But for this particular evening, we wanted to focus it more on action. So previously, we were more talking about ideas, possible approaches to take, more on a cerebral level. But here we want to take it down to the ground and talk about concrete things that we can do together to address the fault lines and crises of our food system. And hopefully out of this evening, we'll come out with some concrete action plans that we can carry forward over the next year or so. So our breakout groups will be the same in both rounds. And of course, in between, people are welcome to switch their groups if they feel the need to. But please do, when you're in your groups discussing with your group members, keep in mind that our aim is for systems change. So while we do encourage a lot of individual initiatives and projects, making sure that everybody is able to grow food on their balconies or create community gardens here and there, what we're wanting to what we want to achieve is the next level up, to scale those projects and initiatives up so that we can address the more systemic layers that need to change in order for all of those individual projects to really take root and be able to address people's needs on a collective and societal scale. After all, we can have so many community gardens, but we can't really distribute the harvest from those gardens if we don't have a broader system in place around those gardens in order to ensure that those harvests can reach everybody necessary. And that's just one example. And as well, I'm going to share my screen. And just, whoops, hold on, let me get prepared first. So throughout tonight, we're going to be creating a timeline as well. And this timeline is meant to be a tool for all of the breakout groups and whatever initiatives. Okay, so here's the timeline. And what we'd like to do is just put in some major milestones that that we in the food movement, however broadly that is defined, need to be or want to be aware of, so that we can put our own actions and initiatives, in a broader picture and help to strategize, our approaches. So for example, in September, there is the UN Food Summit happening. There's also an alternative food summit, occurring roughly at the same time, before or after. It would be good to know so that we can put it on that timeline. And then any other milestones before or afterwards, so that when we are discussing in our breakout groups, we can keep those events in mind and possibly use them to strategize or at least inform our initiatives, especially if we're working on international policy aims or even local regional policy aims that that may benefit from using the Alternative Food Summit. So that's the case now, and I'd like to open it up So if people know of any major events or timelines, or for example, say the provincial election is coming up, that would be an important thing to know. Please either unmute yourself and say that, or you can put it into the chat. And we have Sierra and Erica May available, and they're going to put it in the timeline so that we can all kind of see, over the next year, what is going to happen.
We know there's another UN a pre-summit, which is when most of the NGOs will be engaging in July. I think it's around July 19th. Yeah, it's in July anyway. Maybe we can add that as a target date or something.
Toronto Urban Agricultural Week, yep, from September 11th to 19th.
Did you add the one in Italy, the UN Summit pre-meeting? And track 3, I believe.
Yeah, do you remember the exact date? Because we did add that, but I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah, it's in the email I sent. I'll just look it up.
Okay, so while we're doing that in the background, Erica May and Sierra will be in that mural board. So anyone who has, I guess, events to add to that timeline, please put it in the chat, and maybe just preface it with timeline, : and then whatever that event is, just so that Sierra and Erica may know when they're looking at the chat that that's for the timeline. And in the meantime, we can continue on with the schedule, because I just don't want to take too much time for that. We will be going back to the timeline in after the breakout groups as well. So just keep that in mind as well. So I believe the next item on the agenda is an overview of climate change and calls to action. And we have the lovely David Berman, who will be giving us that overview. David is an organizer with Drawdown Project. And the Drawdown Project is a great tool for anyone who is concerned about the environment, concerned about the food system, or even just, in terms of racial or social equity, and how those issues intersect with the environment and with food. It gives us a whole host of solutions that are right at our fingertips that we can grab onto immediately without waiting for anybody else. So with pleasure, I introduce David and hand him over to the mic.
Well, so thanks for inviting me. Overview. Project Drawdown looks like, in some ways, it looks like a list of solutions to reversing global warming, because it's clear that we're going down the wrong path, and we really have to turn this whole ship around, going in a different direction, as we know. But actually, it's more than just all statistics, even though the numbers are really important. And but one thing that Drawdown has done, and it's the only one that's done it globally, is they've actually done the math. So they've actually mapped and modeled and measured hundreds of solutions to reversing global warming, which we know affects every aspect of our life. And they calculated the number of billions of tons of carbon that could be removed from the atmosphere or prevented from going into the atmosphere. And they calculated the cost of implementing these solutions and how much money would be saved. And if I just show my screen for a second here, to find the right one, there we are. This is the Drawdown website. If you go drawdown.org, and it's very comprehensive, and it's got a lot of good stuff. But I'm going to close it, and I'm going to open this one. And okay, so there's some cute little slides here. Let me just see here. So we have the solutions. We have, I'm going to go, the whole thing. There we are. So, but to make a difference, first of all, there are two things. We have our ideas in our head and we have action in our hands. But what connects our head to our hand is our heart. The heart is an organ of perception. And if we don't feel, if we don't connect emotionally and culturally and spiritually, then the hand won't know what to do, or it'll do some crazy things that we don't want. So we have these solutions and they're there and they're present, but we have to accelerate them. We have to make them big enough so that it actually, as Lily was saying, we can act on a systems level. So we have to shape the culture, and we are doing that. I think when the farmers get together and move a massive petition to the government, and the government responds with a budget that allows for that to happen, then that's shifting culture. When the media, the mainstream media starts to promote a certain way of thinking, that shifts culture. But we also have to build power, and that's what we're talking about when we can affect a federal budget. We are building power politically, but also regionally, locally, with our friends and our communities. These are all really important. And we have to set goals. We have to know specifically what we want, like an open letter, setting a goal of the kind of what we imagine we want to happen first. And then policy shifts. And of course, capital has to shift from funding fossil fuels in the hundreds of billions of dollars that's already going into it to shift towards renewable. And then, yes, behavior, what we do, but how corporations behave as well. And then last, but maybe least, maybe not, is technology. So here's some examples of farm-related solutions to global warming. And here's the billions of tons of carbon that can be removed from the atmosphere by sharing the orchard with the animals. Don't have to cut the grass, you let the sheep do that. You don't have to fertilize your apples because the sheep will do that. And you save a huge amount of carbon in the process. The woodlots, the forests, if we can augment our temperate forests, there's a huge number of tons of carbon. This is over a 30-year plan, and this is globally, of course, but it really makes a difference. And of course, food waste. We know how much food never leaves the farm because it's not pretty enough. We know how much food gets bought and then gets thrown out. The number one contributor to landfill is food. That's morally wrong. But it's really, it puts a huge amount of methane into the atmosphere, and it's this food that people should be eating.
David, I hate to interrupt, but you have a few minutes left.
Okay, I'm almost finished. So, and then regenerative agriculture, of course. But look at what happened here. We removed 22 gigatons of carbon from the atmosphere, and we save almost $4 trillion in money and capital that can be used for really good things. So, and here we have the UN Social Development Goals, and we can see that the intersectionality of this, so that everything we do, regenerative agriculture, it influences poverty, it influences sustainability of communities, it influences the migration of people who are on degraded land, how they can have food sustainability at home, which means they don't migrate to the cities, which means there's less pressure to migrate to richer countries and reduce crime. So everything fits together. So I think that's all I'm going to say, except to say that we have to remember that the land acknowledgement is the acknowledgement of the land herself, the living, breathing, sentient, suffering, sacred land that supports us, that gives us everything we need. And the other thing is with the, of course, the white buffalo calf birth in 1994 was a huge event. That was part of the eighth fire prophecy that's taking place. And that's something that we need to remember, that to understand the system, we have to change the system. To change the system, we have to change our consciousness, our way of relating, thinking. If we think in terms of catastrophe, then the best we can do is how can we mitigate the worst possible outcome. And if we think in terms of solutions and opportunity, then we engage our imagination and our creativity, and we become a genius. That's all I'll say.
Thank you so much, David. And your words actually remind me of what one of my teachers told me, and I was shocked. She told me that we won't have any systemic change until society collapses. And I was just really shocked to hear that from her, because I never expected her to have those kinds of catastrophic, thinking in her head. But she was quite clear about what she meant. And basically, we've built up such a system around us, with so many, I guess, infrastructure, and just a lot of built up, efforts that have gone on in creating our capitalist industrial society, that really, nothing can change until that whole edifice starts crumbling. And so even though, all these crises are giving me heart palpitations, it also gives me hope, because, in the cracks of the system is where we will find the room to implement and grow new solutions. So that,
If I can just say, Leonard Cohen says there is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in.
Exactly.
Colonialism. Like, we can think of capitalism as its latest manifestation of colonialism. And we have not only colonized the peoples of the earth, but we've colonized Mother Earth herself. We've made her into a slave.
Yeah.
And she's rebelling.
She's killing off the parasites, which is, just logical. But I also wanted to point people's attention to a recent victory that we had on the federal level. And that victory was won by the Farmers for Climate Action Collaborative Initiative. And they were able to wrest from the federal government a few $100 million to go towards regenerative agriculture and supporting farmers, in their efforts to adopt regenerative production practices. So I think that's a huge step forward for Canada. There's still a lot of work ahead of us in making sure that the government keeps their word and to let people know that those funds are there for them. But I think that we can take heart in knowing that all the efforts that we put in are not in vain, and victories are possible in any arena. And so, having said that, we're going to start preparing for the breakout groups, and to do that, Dragos will be leading us in a exercise. So I'll just hand over the platform to Dragos.
Thank you, Lily. So last year, one of the things that came out of the forum was a food system solutions little Excel sheet, which aimed to track, kind of document all the work that's being done in various aspects of the food system. So we wanted to continue that this year. Let me just share the link with everybody in the chat. And I'm going to share my screen also. So we have this, and you can all access this. You can just click the link in the chat. Anyone with the link should be able to access and edit here. So the categories that we have here are increasing urban growing and land use, indigenous access to local land spaces. We have policy demands, local food distribution for the GTA, small farm and agroecological investments, food awareness and literacy, Black food sovereignty, and then green jobs and climate action. And they're each broken down into these three columns here. So, which are like, the first one is needs and opportunities that exist. Second column is kind of like strategies that are being taken. And in the third, it's organizations who are currently doing this work, or people who are currently doing this work. And we have also an events tab this year. So you can add upcoming events that you know or have heard about. So I added this event, which is happening on Saturday, which Anand was talking about last week. It's Black food sovereignty event, creating a roadmap to food liberation that African Food Basket is hosting. And that's this Saturday, 12 to 5. There's a link there. So if you know of any other events or any other events pop up, keep the link and we can continue to add. This is like a living, breathing document. So we want to kind of continue to be able to track what we need and what's being done throughout the year. So let's go through like an example here. This is an example that's familiar to us. I'm a member of the St. Jamestown Community Co-op. So we had a need to provide culturally relevant food to our community members of Black and African descent. So we would put that under the needs and opportunities column there. And then someone from African Food Basket could say, hey, we're doing this work. So they write their name there. And then, you know, those folks can theoretically connect. And that way we can hashtag link and build power together. So we want to take some time now to kind of add to it together. So I'll be reading some out as people kind of fill them in. We're going to take a few minutes, but again, you don't have to stop adding to this when our little exercise is over. It'll really help us the most if this functions as a living and breathing document throughout the year, and even just throughout the night tonight. If people hear about or remember some important work being done, or you remember the name of a person or an organization while you're talking in a breakout room, then just go on and just add it to the document. The link will be in the chat there, so go check it out and start filling it up.
We'll also be adding the link to this document onto the Emergency Food Forum community portal, so that anyone can come back later and fill it in, or even to see what others have filled in, because we want to use this as a collaborative tool to help different players and actors within the food movement to connect.
Where would you put the food core, Lily?
I would put it, local food distribution for the GTA.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the role, resource, need, or opportunity would be connecting local communities with small scale local farmers, and also to address farm labor shortages as well as food insecurity in urban communities.
Ooh, got it.
And obviously the group organization already connected to this work is the Equal Just Food Network. I'm not quite sure what to put under the name, organization, strategy to offer. If you have any advice on that, Dragosh.
I feel like the strategy is the food core. That's the strategy that's the action, kind of the strategy that we're trying to build, and the Eco Just Food Network is the organization that's doing it.
Sure, I'd like to describe the food core because I don't think that's intuitive for people. So just think of it as as teams of people going out to help farmers and other food providers, like, for example, cheesemakers, to help them with their production work so that farmers know they can plant in the quantities that they had originally planned, or even to increase the quantities of their plantings, knowing that they have the labor help so that they can maintain those plantings and harvest them, and that there is a community ready to eat that food. And this was to address a crisis that came about when COVID first hit, where farmers didn't have the farm labor help that they were relying on, and so a lot of farmers simply had to plow under or let their crops rot in the field because they didn't have the manpower to harvest them or help them distribute. And which was a shame, because then we had communities like St. Jamestown that was suffering and is still suffering from high levels of food insecurity. So it was, two problems that actually, if you brought them together, they presented solutions for each other. It just needed that connection. So that's what the EcoJust Food Network is trying to do, or is starting to do. So I see people are starting to fill in the spreadsheet. That's great. And while we're doing that in the background again, so even though you're looking at a lot of talking heads in this Zoom session, there's we're encouraging people to do a lot of the background work. So filling in this spreadsheet, filling in the timeline, and that will help lay the groundwork for our breakout groups. And I'd like to invite Susanna to talk about the breakout groups and how we can join them.
Great. Thank you so much, Lily. So I'm just going to share my screen. So we have the topics for the breakout rooms today. We will have our breakout rooms for about 40 minutes. Then we're going to take a short break before doing another round. The breakout rooms will stay the same this time around. So you can choose to go back to the one you were at in the first round. You can choose to go to a different one if you'd like. That's up to you. As we are going through this, I just want us to keep in mind the dish with one spoon treaty, the concepts that we've learned last time about Black food sovereignty, and the oral Rubin collaboration, as well as the context of climate change in which David was speaking about earlier, and farmer-led solutions. So the goal of these breakout sessions is really to be assessing opportunities with the intent to come out of this time together with actionable solutions. So I'm just gonna stop share for a sec, and I'm gonna open the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you guys had some really great discussions in your breakout rooms. If there's anything that was discussed and put into the chat box in your breakout rooms, the breakout room chats are separate to those chats, so they don't actually get saved with the general chat. So if there's some links that you'd like to share, feel free to put them into the chat box here, and that way it'll be captured, because we're going to be saving the chat box as well as recording this session, and that way we're going to send everything to everybody. But yeah, we're about time for our break though.
Okay, so thanks so much, everyone. I'm Nolan. I'm going to be just helping to facilitate the rest of it. So thank you so much for our first round of breakouts. So we are going to have a second round of breakouts in just a second. And Susanna, would you be able to just lead us through that? Awesome. Thank you so much. Sure, no problem. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms again. They're the same breakout rooms as we had last time. And so if you'd like to go back to the same one, feel free to do that. And if you want to go to a different one, let me know and I'll send you there. You can send that note in chat if you'd like to. Okay. So I'm going to open them up now.
Great. Oops, now I've lost it. So we talked about lots of different things. But I'll try and keep it brief. We were trying to identify what resilient local food systems mean. We talked about both building like a regenerative system, like within the land and the soil, as well as like within our communities and within our cultural practices. We had a few different ideas, both, or like one of them was like having educative opportunities, both for workplaces, because they have obviously access to their employees and they can give employees opportunities to learn things about growing and about this food system. We talked about engaging students, especially those who are between their high school and, you know, decision making around colleges, and encouraging like volunteerism, but also providing those opportunities within the food system, and creating sustainable volunteer jobs, which the Food Corps and the Eco Just Food Network plays a central possible role in that. We also talked about building up kind of more community-based composting systems, instead of having like the city take all the compost that ends up kind of having a lot of things mixed into it, whether it be plastic or electronics, etc. And having a more communal one that people can access the soil that it produces. We also talked about, you know, getting the things that we compost to places like Lily's farm and other places that would need it, that could use it, you know, in a more effective way than the city does. Is there anything that anybody would like to add from my group? No? Okay, I feel like I gave a pretty good rundown of this. We had a hard time establishing a really clear working group, but I think part of that is because so central to the direct action is actually the Food Corps, and so in a way our working group somewhat exists. Again, like there are opportunities to have maybe an education working group, or potentially people who do outreach to high schools or businesses to encourage access to that education, or to connect them with the Food Corps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yasmin. I really appreciate it. Sounds like everyone did some great work. I also love the star. Very nice. So the next group is local regional policy group, open letter and PR. And I'm going to just invite the facilitator or facilitators from that group to just share a little bit about what y'all talked about.
Sure. We had really great discussions. It was a lot of big ideas coming out of that. I tried to compile them into some coherent thoughts. So what we have is all over the place here, but I think our main ideas fit into 3 or 4 categories of amplifying the voices of the letter, of course, doing public facing press conferences and that sort of awareness, and then holding government accountable and building the basis for enabling local people to start holding the government accountable. So a few of the specific ideas that came out of that was utilizing the market on St. Patrick Street or on Queen Street near St. Patrick for publicizing the letter in local food coordination. So that's something that would bring a whole bunch of people together. We would have to get the city on board. Potentially it'd be a city motion. We'd get the Black Food Sovereignty Network or Black Food Sovereignty Organization there as well. And this would be a big press conference demonstrating food in the city. Another great idea that came out of this was taking the demands in the food letter, or sorry, in the letter, and turning it into a report card on how the government's doing with those topics currently. I think we can all agree probably poorly, but I think having a resource that demonstrates that with activities, with the people involved, with highlighting who are good and who are bad actors in those decisions that are being made around those areas right now, and tracking that and holding people accountable. Similarly, being able to access our government agencies, or sorry, our government representatives a little bit better, as well as the civil service. So an idea that came out of that was providing a toolkit with a glossary and with a script that is also region-based, so that anyone who wants to contact their local members of government or civil service has an easy way to pull that information together. What's the policy that they're speaking out about? What are words that can be used? What do the words mean in terms of a glossary? And then an easy access to their email addresses as well for sending that out. So there were a few more ideas about just building the network and bringing other people on board in the city. So connecting with faith-based groups, which there are a lot of very sympathetic faith-based groups, and the Unitarian Church, Quakers, Islamic groups, Mennonites. There's a few other organizations that came up, as well as connecting with anti-poverty groups who have a lot of similar goals, but don't necessarily talk a lot about food, and bringing all of these groups on board in order to sign a petition to support the letter and amplify the voices in that way. The last one I'm just going to mention, sorry, I'm taking a long time, but
that's okay, go
we had
for
a
it.
lot of really great stuff come out of this. Was examples of what's important right now. So what's going on right now in areas of need. So in reserves, in St. Jamestown, in Scarborough, and connecting with migrant worker organizations as well, and collecting collecting examples and stories around that. And that could be a good basis for providing content for future publications, for interviews, and for guiding the government agencies and to see the government representatives there to see what's going on. Sorry, there was one more, the parliamentary petition process. So this is something that Josephine suggested, where if we get an MP to sponsor and enough signatures, then they have to read it out in government. So we could turn the letter into a parliamentary petition. So we would need an MP on board, and then the suggestion came out to coordinate that with a social media campaign, along with some of the examples of what's going on, and turn that into a big communication demonstration that would be on record in government as well as in the media. That's a lot of stuff that I just threw at you, but there will be a working group around this. So anyone who wants to get involved in anything around that, there's a lot of opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. And then going on to the group that I helped to facilitate, International Policy Group, the Alternative and the UN Food Summit. We sort of talked about how we wanted to approach this. So there's the big UN Food Summit happening, but also this alternative food summit that's building. And we got some good links together on the critique of the UN Food Summit, but also some of the links from the UN Food Summit properly. And we decided we're going to establish a working group. Everyone's invited, but what we also wanted to talk about was sort of split our focus between the two. Is that on the one hand, we want to start engaging with the actual summit, with the alternative summit, excuse me, and make sure we're actually sitting at the table with people whose solutions dovetail with what we consider important. That is, in a nutshell, human rights. And on the other hand, Opal brought up the point that we actually want to engage with UN rapporteurs and showcase and engage with the UN system properly to sort of highlight our concerns and what's actually happening and put that on the international stage. So we talked about doing both at the same time. So what got floated is submitting a report to the UN. So just as Josephine did back a couple decades ago, considering like what kind of report could we submit to the UN. as one of the sort of large actions that we could take, including like policy, advocacy, momentum, organizing together. Another one that we floated was potentially organizing a UN dialogue. So these are the food systems dialogue. There's 3 different types of dialogues. There's the first one, which are member states dialogue, involving the heads of countries. And then there are sort of the global partnership dialogues that involve different different sort of stakeholders in the larger food sector as a whole. And then there are just individual dialogues, and those can be organized by anybody in the food system. And so we felt that that might be a potential thing to organize as well. So we established long and short is it, we established a working group to meet once every 2 weeks. And if folks are interested in getting involved in that, please let me know, and I'll make sure you get added to the list. So I'll stop sharing right now. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, we have some time to just open it up for everyone. If anyone has any thoughts or had any particular insights, please feel free to share. And also don't forget, we're going to have some time after 9 o'clock for general discussion and getting to know each other a little bit as well.
I noticed when you guys were talking about putting together a report, and we were talking about gathering some examples of food insecurity and problems going on. And I feel like, some of this work can have multiple functions. Like we can, do 1 or 2 big things that can support different working group actions.
Absolutely.
Might I add to Opal's point about the rapporteurs? It's actually the rapporteurs who sort of led the charge out of the UN Food Summit and into an anti-UN Food Summit, because they were so pissed that it took so much just to get human rights on the agenda of this weird hybrid World Economic Forum partnered UN Summit, which is really kind of creepy. So the rapporteurs are definitely on our, they've been here, said quite a few things. I totally agree that it would be good to reach out to them.
Josephine, do you know who the last few executive directors ago from SIRA, who is currently, I think, a rapporteur for the UN and is going around? Yeah, I'm trying to remember her name. I think I'll get in touch with SIRA and find out.
Oh, that's she's been with Canada Without Poverty for a while, and then she became Lila. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yes, Lila.
I can see her
That's
name.
who I'm talking about. Thank you.
I can see her face in my mind. Yeah, she's and Bruce Porter was another person who did some pretty phenomenal global human rights work, stuff like that. But in the meantime, like, I would like to involve St. Jamestown in a independent dialogue, because we have people from all over the world, and many of them are highly educated and have a lot of knowledge. So I think that's a rich ground to pull people into this process, and then they can even put things in other languages. So that's a thought.
I hate to interrupt, but is Lily not supposed to be giving the next steps kind of speech right now?
That's correct. Thank you, Yasmin. I was just about to jump in. No, not at all. And we do have some open discussion time at the end as well. So I'll turn it over to Lily to guide us through some last steps. And then we have a closing from Carolyn at the end.
I heard some working groups being made, though. I thought we were going to do a poll on those to see the level of interest. Susanna, do you have those polls ready?
I can launch this poll in a moment. Just want to make sure I have these right. So from the things that I've kind of gathered from the note takers, as well as what Nolan was talking about, there seems to be a food summit working group, eco-just food system working group. I'm not sure if this was 1 or 2 groups, but there was an open letter action toward a city motion, working group and open letter report card measuring success of the demands. If that is accurate, I can launch that.
I think the open letter working group is one, and we'll just do multiple things.
We'll just do open letter. Okay, great. Open
So
letter.
did you say the, I don't know, post-secondary connection or something like that? Maybe I missed you saying it, Susanna.
I did not say that, but that's
Okay.
a
I don't know.
great
I don't know
idea.
what we want to call it, but there seems to be lots of interest in the chat. So
Yeah,
I think
post-secondary
that-
connection working group. That seems
perfect.
like a
Or
good
like,
idea.
yeah, there's probably a better way to phrase it, because we also want to engage people who haven't entered their post. Well, I guess post-secondary makes sense because that's anything after high school, right? So, okay, cool. Sorry, everybody.
No worries. Okay, just getting this going. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, this is great. So I think it's safe to say that we can get these working groups a nice place on the Lumio and reach out to people and hopefully proceed. That's awesome.
So this is what we
Excellent.
have for the current makeup of the working groups.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Susanna. And thank you so much, everyone. So we're almost at the end, and Lily, I'm gonna just turn it over to you for some next steps.
Sure, thanks, Nolan. So the food forum may be over for this year, or rather for this time, where we are thinking of possibly doing another food forum this fall, since then things seem to be moving pretty quickly. But in the meantime, if people want to continue these conversations and continue talking about issues with our food system and possible solutions that we can collaborate on together, we do invite you to join our Basecamp platform, where these discussions will continue to take place. And I'll just share my screen and show you the Basecamp briefly, just so that you can at least see what it looks like. Can you all see? So this is obviously, you need to create a Basecamp account, and then you would log in. And I'm a member of two Basecamp groups. One is the Emergency Food Forum and the other is the Oasis Food Hub. So you would be joining the Emergency Food Forum Basecamp. And here is where most of the activity takes place. So we have conversations that are broken out into different topics. So Basecamp was actually where the EcoJust Food Network was incubated before it grew large and active enough to kind of hive off and go on to its own platform. So if you go to the topic-based conversations, you see here all of the different conversations that were taking place since the last food forum. And then there are where notes and files is where we keep different files like of minutes and other documents. And then the general chat is just for conversations that are more of a general nature. Say, hey, this is what's going on. It may be of interest to you or whatnot. And then we have our schedule where we keep track of when meetings are scheduled and other events that the food forum may hold or people may have organized within a Basecamp. So that's where the food forum is. This is where the food forum exists when we don't have this 3-day event going on. And if you are interested in continuing with us, please send an email to info@ ecojustfoodnetwork.org, and we will invite you onto the Basecamp platform. Or you can put your email into the chat, and we'll send you an invite as well. We'll also be sending out an email after this, just to kind of reiterate that as well. If anyone is interested in the I guess in the notes and videos of the food forum, of course, you're more than welcome to go to our website, equaljustfoodnetwork.org emergency food forum, and you can access our community portal. And you'll need, of course, the password, which is just simply 2021 food forum, capitalized Fs. And this is where we will be posting and have posted all of the video recordings and Zoom chats of the food forum, as well as where you can access the base camp once you've joined it. You can also access the Equal Just Food Network's Lumio platform if you'd like to be involved in actively building a local food system. And then here we are disseminating the open letter, or at least capturing signatures for the open letter through the Action Network platform. And so for those people who are interested in joining the working group around the open letter, you know, this is where you can access the Action Network and start organizing it from the back end in terms of sending out messages to all the signatories or building a campaign around the open letter. So so this food forum community portal is your entranceway into all of those initiatives. And I think that is all. We will be sending out an exit survey to capture your feedback on this year's annual emergency food forum. So please keep an eye out on that for that, and please fill that out because it will help us in creating the next food forum as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lily. Last but certainly not least, we have a closing with Carolyn.
Good evening, everyone. Ani bojo, agoi seko tensei, wache. I haven't had the opportunity to be with you for these past days that you've gathered together. I guess these Thursdays that you've been gathering together. But just popping in at the last little bit, it sounds like much has happened. And there's been lots of good conversations. So I hope your time together, you've had the opportunity to build and deepen your relationships with one another. Because the relationships are the foundation of everything. Whether in our home, in our personal life, in our work, or with our school. And when we think about that relationship, it begins with ourselves. You know, what is the relationship that we have with ourselves? What is the relationship that we have with Mother Earth? Because those are all connected. And the relationship with our loved ones, and our community, and our nations. For when we have a strong foundation in ourselves, we'll have stronger relationships with all those I've mentioned. And so working together as you have over these past 3 days has created that opportunity for reciprocity and gratitude, I'm sure. But also that opportunity to witness each other's stories for the work that you are doing, your passion, the opportunity to share and to learn from one another. And so when people come together and work in a good way, it kind of makes that work stronger. And so I have this braid of sweetgrass, and there's 21 strands in a braid of sweetgrass. And I could easily break one strand. But when those strands are braided together, they become stronger. And that represents the work that you're all doing together. For you all coming together, you are stronger in your work, in your vision. And so I hope you are all inspired and activated to continue the work that you are doing for that better future and for the coming generations that are yet to be born, those that are human and those who are more than human. And so I invite you to take that time to reflect. And perhaps if it feels right for you, I'm going to just invite you just take a moment in the chat to possibly just share a couple of words of what you are taking away from these 3 days that you've shared together. Maybe it's a piece of inspiration, maybe it's a key learning, or maybe it's some gratitude. But just take a moment and just to write that in the chat box. And I'll just share those words out loud. So I see hope, more strength and motivation, connection, strength in the knowledge that this unity is here, renewed determination. Good to see so much work has been done here. Inspired, witnessing and learning from our elders in food justice. Growing community, compassion, relationship building, refreshing, ready to work. Planetary paradigm shifts, essential work, thankful, excited. Synergy. So, and dedication. Hope for the future. Sacredness. Grateful for everyone's knowledge and openness to share and teach. Empowered. Motivated. I am grateful for the commitment of many doing this work year after year, building a foundation for us to continue to work together. So I invite you all to take those words that you just heard me read out loud that you all shared and carry them in your bundle for those days that may be hard and challenging, for those days where you may feel alone in the work that you're doing, for those days you may feel hopeless. Remember those words that were shared. Carry them in your pocket, in your bundle. Revisit those words. Let those words inspire you and give you the hope to continue on doing the good work you're all doing. So I want to say miigwech walalio to all of you for taking a stand and doing all that you're doing. And another person said, I went back and read the chat from the opening, and I'm sure I'll do the same for this. We can have an after party hangout and celebrate now. So yeah, I just want to wish you all a peaceful mind, good health, and long life in the journey that you are on with each other. Take care, everyone. Bamapi.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. Such a blessing.